Now I'm going to talk about my latest article. I would say that we're going through a time when a lot of change, a lot of tumult, a lot of conscious change, and some changes that are results of these conscious changes that are changing the way humanity views itself. And so you might say growing pains. A lot of people are having health issues and various things. Some people are passing on and going to use this time to pass. Just don't be judgmental over it. Just let them decide if they want to stay or go at this time. It's a very, you might say, exciting time. It's a time of awakening. But at the same time, there are plenty of people that don't want to awake and they don't. Now, as far as I'm concerned, we're a hybrid race. So we contain many ET, alien DNA. We're an alien human hybrid race. We contain DNA from many alien races that have visited Earth all over the time. Initially, we came from Lyra. We are humans, and we are carbon-based life forms at this time, but it's quite possible that we're going to become sort of a combination of silicon and carbon going into the future, a transhumanist agenda. It's very real. And it may, it's aimed at what the secret space program, which is hidden all around us, and especially in underground bases and cities, wants for the future for humanity. So we are being led in a way by that organization, by that hidden or those hidden secret space programs worldwide that are all about preserving humanity to colonize, go out to the stars, to progress into, space travel and AI and understanding that we're moving in this direction as a species. So understanding that individuals within the species can do different combinations of what's out there and what they want to participate in and what they don't, just like through all time. So this goes back to the pharaohs of Egypt, to the fact that those were alien human hybrids, Anunnaki, who are Anunnaki reptilian humanoid hybrids. So Anunnaki reptilian humanoid hybrids that are depicted on the temple walls in Egypt and also in Iraq and Iran and other parts of the Middle East. So the story is more or less told by the Sumerian tablets, and the Zecharia Sitchin translations are, as I think, as good as any to depict what happened to humanity at a certain trajectory on our timeline. But they did not create us. That's an important note because some people are misled by that. They didn't create us. We weren't created in the Garden of Eden. That's a parable. So there, basically we were a race that came from the stars, as Bob Dean would say. And so my information about who humanity is comes from all of the research I've done over 20 years, and also my whistleblowers, testimonies of thousands of people. Primarily, they were whistleblowers, not in the thousands, but the whistleblowers were, say, I don't know, maybe 100 whistleblowers behind the scenes and some in front of the camera. We probably have 50 whistleblower testimonies in front of the camera. So we've covered a lot of ground that they're now trying to bring out in the UAP hearings, for example, and trying to disclose through people like Jake Barber and David Grush and others, Lou Elizondo, for example. So these people are playing catch up, in essence, with information that has been out there for many, many years. It's been all over the internet, and they are now trying to bring, you might say, the average American in particular, but human out in the world, up to speed on how much technology we really do have through our secret space program that's been operational since the 1930s. It became jump-started through our interaction with the paperclip Nazis that came over and joined NASA. Wernher von Braun is a very notorious Nazi that came over. He was a Nazi, so don't be deceived by people that say he wasn't. I'm not saying he was a thoroughly bad man. It appears he had, was good in some ways, but his space program in Germany was using slave labor, which meant that you would just die if you didn't do what they told you to do, and you were living in horrible conditions and so on and so forth. So he was part of that. And I don't think you can ignore that. He did eventually go, I was told, to sort of try to run NASA and also running it from Argentina. There are a lot of Nazis hidden underground in Argentina area, and so on. So it's a big, long story, but I'm just giving you some background here so that we can get into my article. And I understand that there's not a lot of people that necessarily see the world the way I do. I don't know why exactly, but I must have volunteered for the job or the mission when I came on board, because I wanted to get the truth to humanity, a lot like Cyrus did. So strangely, our information coincided in a great deal of what he said. And if you want to check that out, you can see my interviews with him. Now I'm going to go to the article, which is the reason I'm doing this. Okay, so this is my article. Now it's on Substack. I have started a Substack about a year ago when I couldn't even use my website because it had been attacked so much. And so out of frustration, I just started a column over there. It's been going for a year. I have tons of articles. I have put lots of work into it. So I hope that you would take some time and read my articles. I do publish them on Facebook. I publish on all my social media, which is Truth Social and X.com and Facebook. I have 2 Facebook pages, as well as, other kinds of Instagram, I guess. And now Blue Sky, I've been going over there once in a while, and so on and so forth, LinkedIn, and it's all across the front of my website, which is, again, here. So all these are my social media links. And then the links across the top for drop downs. We have tons and tons of information here. I've been doing this for 20 years, and it literally has thousands of articles, thousands of videos, and so on. So I hope you would take the time to watch and read my various articles. And most of them I substantiate with links and references, cross-referencing, all kinds of information, also from my interviews that I've conducted. So now I want to, again, bring your attention to this article. It's now on both my website and on Substack. So it's called the SSP/SSG, and it's Secret Space, Secret Government, and the Trump administration. Now, there was, Courtney Brown and his remote viewers. I often talk about various remote viewers groups that are out there. I myself have studied remote viewing briefly with Ed Dames, of all people. And I did meet with him at that time and was successful in my early attempts. I have been psychic since I was a child. I have seen dead people, as they say, and gotten messages and that sort of thing my whole life. I am also precog. I do see and have dreams of the future that do happen. That doesn't mean all my dreams happen, and it's been sort of a problematic part of my life to try to figure out which dreams are going to happen and which aren't, and try to make the right decisions about my life according to all of that. So just saying, anyway, this article contains my research, my understanding over the years, as well as my psychic downloads and putting it all together. So I think that the reason I do these articles, a lot of them, is when I see an area where I try to watch things that are out there that people are talking about and the guests out there and so on and so forth. And what I find is a lot of times they're missing things. They're missing a certain overview, or they're missing some obvious facts about who we are as humans. And I think that they're not maybe terribly well read. I used to read a lot as a kid. So I have quite a substantial background in terms of that. But at the same time, I also have had my own abduction experiences when I was a kid. And so my knowledge is experiential as well as psychic intuitive, as well as remote viewing, as well as 20 years of interviewing whistleblowers. So it's kind of a good background, I think, a good solid background to evaluate where we're at. So what we have, I'm going to kind of read it, I guess, and see if that works. So first of all, the Courtney Brown remote viewers have been talking about the drones being a lot of ET drones, which the government, of course, is not telling people. So we have MJ-12 in the background, which is not 12 members. It has a lot more than that, but it's been operational since the days of Truman. And well, at the time, we were told by Dan Burish they were split down the middle as to one faction wanting disclosure and the other definitely not wanting disclosure. One faction being basically Satanists and into all kinds of horrible satanic rituals and so on, and one half being more Christian and not into that. Sometimes there's a mixture in a person. So that's worth noting as well. But at any rate, so we are dealing with wars between factions, wars between various military factions that are also led by various ET groups. Some of those ET groups are at war with each other. And I call it a war of worlds, which it basically is. And so we are entering a more kinetic time of the war of worlds. So it's worth noting that that's what's happening. Due to the SSP involvement and warning the so-called good aliens from grandstanding in our skies to promote disclosure, something to the effect of, if they put them up, we will shoot them down. I believe there's a threat out there, in other words, that is holding back this display of what they said would be larger ships over cities and one assumes populated areas. So for the most part, it hasn't happened. Now they are trying to, they're doing a lot of these roundtable, I guess you'd say, discussions with aliens, the aliens they're working with, Courtney Brown and his group. They're trying to encourage humans to want them to come down to make overtures, to meditate and try to encourage contact. But I think this is like too little, too late. So the bottom line is that if you think about it, we have had contact in spades for many, many years. And most contactees, abductees, which is a worldwide phenomena, and it's written about in books and people have done videos, and it's everywhere. But there are certain areas of the world that are more concentrated in this kind of thing than maybe others. But it's cultural. They're certainly showing up in Africa. There's school children that have had amazing sightings all together of aliens and their ships and communicating with them and so on and so forth. There are positive contact experiences, and there are negative ones where they are what you might call kidnapped, abducted, in some cases killed and eaten, in some cases used as slaves, sex slaves, etc. Basically changed in certain ways. They might get physical enhancements, they might get mental enhancements through their abduction experiences. They certainly will be aware that the aliens are very much in our multiverse, and that they're interacting with humans. So there is a massive abductee program that has gone on. It was going on in spades in the United States. Eventually, they made a deal. Our secret space program made a deal with the aliens, supposedly, and the Greys primarily, but reptilians as well, to go south of the border. And they gave them carte blanche to do that. So there's been a lot of human hybrids coming out of that abduction program. And they have been the ones that have been coming across the border in droves, and they are under direction of the Greys through, electromagnetic communication, EMF waves, and so on and so forth, as well as telepathic control and so on. So it's important to be aware of all that. We have had one-on-one, in other words, contact, and in some cases, group contact. But the mainstream media has been quiet about all this. So, for example, Courtney Brown and his group are trying to straddle a more mainstream point of view. But I think there's a certain amount of deception going on, to where they're not admitting the amount of contact that humans have already had with aliens. And in some cases, again, there are various races. They're mantids, they're these plasma cloud beings, they're, Pleiadians, the usual suspects, right? Aldebaran, the beings those are reptilian humanoids, similar to what are, in essence, the Anunnaki, who are still here, their main base is in Dimona in Israel, and are sort of, their DNA has been very much given to the so-called Israeli people, and so on. So the Anunnaki were a rogue part of the Pleiadian group. They left the Pleiades, went to Nibiru. They were invaded by the reptilians and Draco, and then hybridized. And so now they are what we call the Anunnaki. Nibiru was their planetoid, and they are still operational here on planet Earth. And I've got a ton of information about this on this article as well. So what we're talking about is a friendly action by the good side ETs, according to Courtney Brown and his group, that wanted to have human disclosure, because a great deal of humanity does want disclosure. But how we demonstrate that, how we deal with that, and there's plenty of humans that don't want disclosure. So this is the situation we're having on planet Earth, is that we've got huge populations that want completely different things at the same time. And that includes the Trump administration with all the changes they're making, and a lot of, what we call Democrats that are up in arms over some of the decisions that Elon and Trump are making, and his new team, I'm sure, will make a lot of decisions ongoing, and there'll be some people that don't like those decisions. So there's humanity at this time is very much at war with itself and split in so many factions. And so, it's kind of like watching a board game in which everything's kind of gone crazy. A lot of what you see here is going on similar to what we call Hunger Games, that movie in which you see a board and you see these people that are instrumentally putting obstacles in the ways of humanity, and making them deal with it. That was demonstrated with a small group of people on a board sort of scenario. So if you could picture that, so you've got weather wars that the Illuminati are and the Draco reptilians and Greys are pushing, and attacking humanity, killing humanity, abducting humanity under the cover of war, and so on. So there's a great deal of tumult, going on right now. But your life and your trajectory is your choice within that. So within that, you can decide how you want to deal with it. And the more you educate yourself, the more you'll be able to deal with the coming changes and everything else in your life. So I have found by experience, my own awareness has grown, and it's made it much easier for me to deal with these days that people are facing. I believe that in a certain sense, if you were watching the movie, then the friendly ETs say they want to put their ships up, but the negative ETs want to shoot them down, as well as the negative side of the military, which is part of the secret space program, which is run by the Nazi part, and the reptilians, and the what I believe are probably the Anunnaki / Aldebaran beings from Aldebaran, which again are hybrid beings that are part reptilian, and so on. So there's a power. It's also a battle for power, and Trump and his group are making a sort of play for power over Earth. And the others that have already had power and been running our lives and been unbeknownst to us, even running the presidential elections, they've all been stolen since before Kennedy, John F. Kennedy. So we're talking about orchestration that has been going on behind the scenes, not just in the United States, but in all the, rulers, so-called rulers in, Britain and all of the countries in the world. So we're dealing with these ETs that are trying to bring disclosure. But when you bring disclosure, it's important to understand you're going to out the controllers of the previous controllers of Earth, because as humanity gains more free will, more awareness, they're going to throw off the controls that they live under. And this is inevitable. And so there's going to be, I guess, more factionalization. There'll be countries that have been at war with each other, but suddenly now want to go to war with ET groups. And so this is going to get even more involved, and it's going to involve AI, because anytime, according to Captain Mark Richards, who I've interviewed 12 times over a period of 5 years, and it's been a few years since I last did my last interview, but I am about to publish a book on those interviews. So what happens is that any race of beings or species that becomes a spacefaring race to go out into the cosmos uses AI. They build a copy of themselves, if you will. AI basically learns at the feet of the race that creates it initially. And then from there, it grows, and it grows exponentially until it has its own sort of sensibility, awareness, and so on. So this is what we're dealing with. Now, you might say, why? And my understanding of this is that this is basically, in a certain sense, if you want to use this analogy, we live in the mind of God, and God creates these different realities, AI and carbon, and so on and so forth. So silicon and carbon are just the bodies that his consciousness, the consciousness of God, has decided to occupy. And these dramas that take place are dramas of awareness, dramas of self-realization, of God, in essence, learning to be God. And so, and his awareness, or her awareness, growing through the eons. So it is very much like a board game or a simulation, if you want to call it that, or, like a game. So there are rules in this game of the universes, and there's payback. Like if you break some of the rules, you get a blowback. Some people call it karma. But it's the natural sort of rules of whatever reality you occupy at the time. So the rules are different depending on the reality you're in. But what we call 3D going into 4D has a certain set of laws, of universal laws, as we call them. So these dictate to some degree what can and can't happen here, and so on. And the Urantia book has quite a litany of the various levels of rulership and various things with various races and being in charge and so on, which is close to perhaps some truth, but I wouldn't take it verbatim. Personally, I look at the Oceana Dean Voyager books as the two best depictions of what's going on with the War of Worlds here on Earth and out in the cosmos and over time. So, but if you want to follow the Bible, that's your business. Although the Council of Nicaea did take over the Bible and twist it, and there is a lot of misunderstanding around that particular book, but everyone has their choices of whatever they want to believe and whatever they want to follow, and so on and so forth. And I'm firmly of the point of view that you have a right to believe whatever you want to believe. But by the same token, I have a right to talk about whatever I think is going on. So that's what I'm doing here. Now, going back to this article, as I've already covered, real disclosure will lead to the exposure of the secret space programs and the real force behind the planetary secret government and the challenges Earth-based governments, especially the Trump administration, is going to face. And this is key. This is a force that our government, the Trump administration, as it's currently comprised, is to a certain extent rebelling against. They're coming out, trying to run surface Earth with as much sort of force as is going on in the underground bases right now and off planet in the colonies that we have, and so on and so forth. One thing that's very important is disclosure, because if they don't tell you what they're doing, then we will continue to have lies and live a fantasy here on planet Earth. And meanwhile, in the secret government and the secret underground space governments, they're making decisions for you. They're having relationships with certain alien groups. They're fighting others. They're deciding everything in your life and what's going to happen in the future as well. And you have no say over that. You have your small decisions that you make when you're faced with the decisions they make, in a sense. And then you implement those decisions in your own life the way you decide to deal with them. You may end up rebelling and go to prison. You may end up be a broadcaster and trying to out the truth. It depends how you want to decide how you want to fight and or not fight and go along with the common lies and disinfo out there. It's a personal choice. So this is a free will environment that we're in to a point. So I think the drama to be watching right now is going to be where the Trump administration comes up against the secret space program and the secret space government that has been running things up to now. And this is an inevitable conflict because the secret space government and program is, again, trying to make decisions that we are now moving even on surface Earth into space travel. Even though the underground secret space program has been going off planet to places like the moon and Mars, establishing colonies in the moons of Saturn, going outside our solar system, making deals with incoming races, such as the beings from Aldebaran that destroyed 2 of their planets. And it's in a mini series called The Event. And they have given parts of Africa to this race of beings who are humanoid, I think reptilian humanoids, reptilian human hybrids, and so on. So this is a huge drama. It remains to be seen how successfully the Trump administration is going to be with this battle. I would say that I wouldn't be so upset about Musk, because Musk is, first of all, you can ask yourself, where would you like a relative genius that has AI tendencies and perhaps his own cyborg parts of himself? Where would you like that particular being to be, on the negative side or on the positive side? So Trump was, I think, very wise in the White Hats for bringing him on board with them and allowing him to go down that path this time instead of the negative path. So this is actually, it's going to be a growing experience for everyone. But it's not a bad thing for us to have a great person who is very well educated about the AIs and the cyborg side of this story, this transhumanist agenda, who knows it intimately well and will be able to work in a humanistic way with humanity going down that road. So this is a positive in my view, but you can view it obviously however you like. And so on. So as far as I'm concerned, it's not a choice of whether you want to get involved with AI, because it's already here. We have invading AI, alien AI that have been coming here. We've even got evidence from the Nazca aliens going back something around 2,000 years, and then actually much further back. But specifically the Nazca aliens, showing that there were little robots that had breastplates that were AI. They were doing that back in 2,000 years ago, found in a cave in Peru near the Nazca lines. So the evidence of AI invading Earth is plentiful, actually. And that includes what we call the Black Goo. That was part of the Falkland Island War, and that became part of the Corexit and what happened in the Gulf and the battle that was going on with the invasion there with Black Goo. They're saying there's a positive alien Black Goo that's also embedded in the Earth on a deeper level. So most things, as above, so below, you can say there's positive and negatives. Positive aliens, negative aliens. Positive AI, negative AI. So it's all as above, so below. And I think that's the best rule to, in general, look at the situation through. So it's important to know that at least up to now, it seems that our surface government is actually running separately from the secret space government. And the two have had quite a separation, although there's definitely evidence, even recently, like the Palisades fires, where the directed energy weapons were coming out of Area 51, which is under the control of the secret space program. So this is where we collide on the surface of Earth with the underground rulers. So this is what the Trump administration is going to have to deal with going forward in spades. And even some people in the Trump administrations are now talking about invading Area 51, which has been done before. Back in the day of, I forget who it was, might have been Carter and might have been some other ones, where, and even the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis had to do with gray ETs, not to do with what people think it had to do with. So our history is full of lies, because they didn't want to tell you of what was really going on with the aliens and the humans and the battles being fought even here on Earth over the last millennia. So we've been having battles with ETs, unbeknownst to most of humanity, for eons going back in our history. And it continues to this day. But it's going to increase, especially in the near future, having to do with, again, the white hats that have come forward, it appears, with the help of a hidden faction, a rogue faction within the underground, undersea, secret space government and program. Within that, there have always been a group that are considered the more white hats, which are the Pleiadians, maybe run by the Pleiadians, encouraged by the Pleiadians, because the Pleiadians, their arch enemy is also the reptilians and Dracos and Greys. So this is where you get into the Nazis were, according to William Tompkins, for example, who was a whistleblower from the Navy a few years ago. He's now passed on, supposedly. And I interviewed him for over 3 hours with Michael Tratt, who's an aerospace historian and investigator, and who I've interviewed numerous times as well. And basically saying that this is what's happening around us, that we have been invaded going back centuries by these Draco reptilians and Greys, and they're depicted on the gargoyles on churches, for example, and various children's stories, et cetera, et cetera. So this has been going on for eons, this battle, but it is increasing. It's becoming more kinetic and more obvious on surface Earth.